It's TRS Matt here, and we are here to talk about the brand new GTR Ultra indicator LED bulbs that have just come out from the guys at GTR Lighting. But before we get into that, I want to educate you guys a little bit on what makes an LED bulb for your turn signals, your brake lights, etc. much more effective and better than a bulb that is not. Okay, so I know that a lot of our viewers out there understand when you're doing a projector retrofit or upgrading the bulbs in your low beams, for example, you've got to have precision. You've got to have a bulb that puts the light in the reflector or the projector around it so that you end up with a properly distributed beam pattern. Well, that same exact philosophy can be carried into turn signals, for example, because the facets inside of your headlight that surround the turn signal, the reflective facets, are very carefully engineered around a certain point in the original halogen bulb that is designed to fit in there from the factory. Now, when it comes to an LED bulb upgrade, you can't just expect that you're going to take the world's brightest LED bulb with 100 LED chips and 1,000 watts of power and put it in there and it's actually going to work right, because it's not actually going to make very effective use of that reflector that surrounds it. The key is making sure that all of that powerful light, or at least most of it, ends up back onto the surfaces of that reflector that surrounds the bulb, because that's really what's going to make it visible at a far distance. You can have a very bright bulb and standing next to the car in your driveway, okay, yeah, the bulb might look actually quite bright. But when you got oncoming traffic driving against you in the middle of the daytime from 200 meters away, that same bulb that looks bright in your driveway is not going to look very bright at a distance. You have to use the reflector around the bulb and your turn signal or your tail light to actually create that same impression of intensity at a distance. And that is key when it comes to the GTR iLED bulbs in comparison to the next closest competitor out there. What is that bulb? Well, it is the VLED's Triton. And honestly, I've got to give respect and love to the VLED's Triton, because there's not many products in the automotive aftermarket that can stick around more or less unchanged for over a decade and still have the same amount of clout that the VLED's Triton does. I mean, this bulb, it has developed a reputation for being the brightest turn signal bulb out there in the market. But the problem with that bulb is that it has the same exact thing that I was just describing, is that you could stand next to it in your driveway or in the shop or in the garage, turn that thing on, and yes, it does look extremely bright to the naked eye when you're looking directly at the bulb. But from a distance, that's where it's actually going to lose compared to the GTR iLED, which, if you look at the optic on this, it has an optic that does project light forward, and it does give you the impression of that high intensity from standing directly next to it. Again, so we check that box. But the key difference here is that it has this backshoot reflector, so that about 60% of the light produced at the base of the optic is actually directed back and into the reflective facets that surround the bulb once it's inside of the housing. And again, to remind you, that is key to make sure that the intensity is visible at a far distance, and that is why the GTR iLED bulbs will actually be much more effective and brighter than the Triton in the real world. First of all, these bulbs are designed to be universal, okay, in any application. And what I mean by that is that the base is actually designed with these little screw points where you can change the screw holes and actually twist it into the existing socket inside of the back of your housing, and it will work with any 3156, 3157, 7440, 7443, 3156, 3157, and they even have a 4257 application as well for a lot of Ford trucks. In addition to changing the positions of the screws to make sure that it locks into the back of the housing, of course that includes a base kit which is fully sealed and it will allow you to plug and play with your stock setup. Now, the other nice thing about these bulbs is that in most applications, you don't actually need to do any kind of modification to your wiring. If you're using them in your brake lights, plug and play, you have no problems at all. If you're using them in an application where the bulb blinks, such as a turn signal, all you've got to do is add the turn signal adapter piece directly in line. There's no wire tapping, it's plug and play, and that will make sure that you don't have any error codes or hyper flashing whatsoever when you're using those signals. It's very convenient and definitely an industry standard, again, to avoid the need for any resistors. I love that about them. All right, so when you're connecting the hyper flash adapter, all you've got to do is literally plug this in here, twist on the barrel connector, creates a fully waterproof seal on that, and then you'll just put the base that you're going to use to plug into the car's harness right on the other side here. Again, fully plug and play, one more barrel connector, and you're ready to connect this directly to your vehicle's harness, and again, you will have no hyper flashing whatsoever, even if using this in a turn signal. It goes without saying that obviously if you could put these bulbs anywhere, again, your turn signals, your brake lights, whatever, they've got to be available in all the different colors. Now, GTR has thought of that. They are available in red, amber, white, and the most popular, Switchback, of course, which is nice. You've got to remember that in comparison to all the other LED bulbs out there with these yellow LED chips mounted all over them, those things are going to stick out like a sore thumb when mounted inside of your turn signal, but these actually look quite sharp because when they're inside of the housing, all you really see is the optic and this nice gray anodized base that surrounds it, and it really looks sharp. It's quite OEM plus. It doesn't look out of place. It doesn't look like a cheesy aftermarket product that you've shoved in there. It really is going to look sharp, and again, that's something else that I really admire about this product. So if you were looking for the world's best set of turn signals, brake lights, parking lights, or switchbacks to match a set of high performance headlights that you've already got built, you should definitely consider the brand new GTR ILED Ultra indicator bulbs. These things are going to be the brightest out there, standing up close, at a distance, universally compatible, fully waterproof, and they look sharp when inside of your housings. Honestly, I think these things are a layup of a product. Really excited to get these things in the product line, and kudos to GTR Lighting for a very well engineered product.